Opening night. After weeks of preparation, it finally came. For the cast and crew of A Pack of Lies, there was the usual nervous anticipation as they prepared for the curtain and the lights to come up. But for Milton Britsky, head of the theater department at Missouri Southern, this was a very special milestone in his career. A Pack of Lies was the last play he will direct at Missouri Southern. After 31 years, starting as a speech teacher at Joplin Junior College, Britsky has decided to retire.
Well, you know, there just comes a time when you think it's been enough time, Sean. I didn't want to, and I probably am known as the old man in the theater, but I didn't want to get round-shouldered and wrinkled and everything else before I turned in my shoes. And also because I wanted to have a number of good, vital years yet to start a new life of some kind. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it is going to be new. The fact that it will not be routinized in terms of a time clock. As a matter of fact, this morning I was thinking as I was doing my pace walking, gosh, when after May 17th I can be able to stay out here a lot longer instead of having to get in and showered and all that and get to school.
Britsky came to Joplin Junior College in 1956 after attending Auburn University, where he directed his first play, You Touch Me. It was during his time at Auburn that Britsky met his wife, Tridge.
Shortly after I graduated from college, I married Milton, and of course our interests in theater have been almost parallel.
And interestingly enough, Tridge was a senior at Auburn University, where I first taught, and she was in the first play that I directed at Auburn University.
With his new bride, Britsky came to Joplin in August of 1956. At that time, Joplin Junior College was located at 4th and Byers.
Well, there was no theater. There was no auditorium, really. It was, and I'm sure lots of people are familiar with that particular kind of configuration. It was a gym, essentially a gym, and it did have a little tiny postage stamp stage that was, I don't remember the dimensions, probably no more than 12 to 15 feet proscenium, and it looked absolutely impossible. So my husband decided that this would be a wonderful opportunity to do theater in the round, just there on the floor of the gym.
After we looked at the large room, I caught at the peripheral vision in my right eye, way up there, a thing that looked as though it might have been a stage. It was filled with junk, and I asked the question, is this the stage?
For his first production at Joplin Junior College, Britsky selected a play with 9 parts, and exactly 9 students tried out for the play.
The first one that I can think of was one of my first students with whom I am working currently, and that's Dwayne Hunt. He was my first student, had the lead in the first play that I directed here, Mr. Pym Passes By.
The thing I remember about that show so vividly, though, was a tremendous ice storm came in on opening day of the show, and we knew nobody would be there. I think Mr. Britsky actually doubted that the actors would make it down to the junior college, but we did. And so did some people. About 66 people showed up in the middle of that terrible ice storm. They must have come in by dog sled or something because cars were not running that night.
One of the first students that we encountered was Dwayne Hunt. He had come into the junior college at 4th and Byers, the first year that my husband taught there. And of course, he is now in the faculty, a very dear friend, and so we've known him all of that time. Yes, he was an exceptional student.
Gwen Hunt, his wife, the second year I was here, she was a student of mine, and certainly an outstanding individual and extremely talented in many directions. From the standpoint of acting, from the standpoint of dance, she's a brilliant dancer, served as our choreographer for several musicals that we did, and has many other talents.
It was all students. You know, we built the sets, we made the costumes, we did everything according to Mr. Britsky's direction. And it was a real challenge, but it was great fun, and our audiences loved it too.
In 1958, the junior college moved to this building at 8th and Wall in Joplin. The building, which now serves as Joplin Middle School and was Memorial High School prior to that, was quite an improvement over the facilities at 4th and Byers.
First of all, we did indeed have a stage, and we were doing proscenium stage at 8th and Wall. We did only a theater in the round at 4th and Byers, which incidentally is a parking lot now.
In Act 2, Scene 7 of As You Like It, William Shakespeare wrote, "All the world is a stage." And that may or may not be true, but the conversion of the Barn Theater between 1964 and 1966, when the college moved to its present location, shows that it is interesting what can become a stage.
There was no theater in '64 when the estate was purchased, and there was no appropriation once the money was available from the state to go to work on the campus. So I sold Dr. Billingsley on the idea of, who is the new president, on the idea of the possibility of converting this barn, the Wallauer barn, into a theater, because I saw that it had possibilities. When I went to Dr. Billingsley and talked to him about the possibility of conversion, he said, sounds like a great idea if you can do it for under $30,000. And we did it for $23,000, as a matter of fact.
And everybody got very excited about the idea of having a barn theater. Of course, they're very common back in on the East Coast, but a barn theater in the Midwest is not too common. We drew up plans, had blueprints made. Those were all checked out by architects and approved. And then the process of remodeling the number 1 barn, I guess was what it was called, the one with the silo anyway, which had been a barn housing prize dairy cattle, began. You want to know what our first job was? Shoveling out the back door and washing all the fly spots and tearing out all of the stanchions and partitions that formed the stalls for the cows. And of course there was the second floor up there where the auditorium seating and the stage is now, but that had a very narrow stone stairway leading up to it. It was only a hayloft at the time, so that stone stairs had to be jackhammered out. Most of the rather crumbling concrete flooring had to be jackhammered out too, and we, Milt and I, and one carpenter, professional carpenter that was hired to do a lot of the work, and some work-study students, and just a whole lot of volunteers from students in the college would come out day after day after day and work on that barn until we finally got it ready to open in, I believe, 1968.
I think the interesting thing about the whole process was that this building is still virtually the same as far as the materials in it. You're sitting on the original loft floor, where I saw it for the first time was stacked high with hay. And then we devised the paneling there and for a sound booth and a light booth, and used a ladder to get up there, because had we built a stairway, it would have taken too much room. We were short on space everywhere. But anyway, it worked very nicely. And we had, our first chairs were something else. In order to be lightweight, so they could be easily moved and inexpensive, they were aluminum chairs that were collapsible, but they were in groups of 3 and 4, and the seat was of one piece, and it made for an interesting situation. At any time someone would shift his or her weight, the other 3 people would flip up, and all through the performance you'd hear flip, 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 flip. So it was kind of disconcerting, although it served its initial purpose. They were inexpensive, and I think we had those for about 3 years. And one evening, After a performance, a man came down and spoke to me. He said, "Say, how would you like some more comfortable seats up there?" And I said, "Fine." I said, "Where are they?" And he said, "Well, I've got them stored in a barn in Lamar." And he said, "If you come up and get them, they're yours." He said, "They're from an old movie house." And this upholstery right here was the original. And as near as he could determine it, it was 1922 when they were installed in a movie house in Kansas City. We got them, and they were filled with dirt daubers underneath the chairs, and we cleaned dirt daubers for months, it seemed to me, and we put new upholstery on the seat. But otherwise, they're the same chairs. And then we had them installed after we got the risers. We bought these risers so that every seat in the house was fairly comfortable and easy viewing as far as the stage is concerned, which is something you always have to consider in designing any theater, is the comfort of the audience. And they were comfortable, I think. It was very intimate. The last row there, I think, is about maybe 35 or 40 feet to the edge of the stage. They can see perfectly. They can hear perfectly. The actors can be very intimate and low projection as far as communicating to the last row.
The first production there was an original production. It was a world premiere, as a matter of fact, of a staged version of Leo Tolstoy's novel Anna Karenina.
But I was very actively involved with the Joplin Council for the Arts at the time that move took place, and we were thinking of having a first fall festival of the arts that same year that the barn was opening. So one night, a group of us were sitting around in our living room at home, and I thought, what fun it would be to open the barn with an original adaptation of the Tolstoy's novel Anna Karenina. And actually, that's what we did.
We spent the summer before writing the play, and I was in Florida and she was here, but we were writing the play together. And ultimately, that was what we staged first at the Barn Theater.
A short time after the opening of the Barn Theater, the college's adaptation of Finian's Rainbow became part of a USO overseas tour.
We did it originally for the stage at 8th and Wall. And then the subsequent year, we moved out here and did it as a revival, but also as a production for our season, and as an opportunity to raise some money for the fund, for the spending fund for the actors.
That had been accepted by the USO and the American Theater Association as one of their 6 overseas productions for that year, and that meant we had to revive it and put it in a touring form so that we could travel overseas to U.S. military bases with the show. So it was, in effect, yes, a revival of that show. We staged it at the Barn Theater then in its touring version, and then that summer of '68 we flew off into the wild blue yonder to the Northeast Command,
which included the countries of Labrador, Newfoundland, Greenland, and Iceland. And it was quite an experience. We were touring the various air bases, Air Force bases and Army bases, and we were flown on many occasions to really outposts to perform, where we did, instead of Finian's Rainbow, we did a musical review type thing. All of the people could sing and dance and do magic acts, etc., and we formulated what we called a variety show before we left here. But we actually ended up playing the variety show more times than we did the stage show because we didn't have stages to perform in. I remember one place that we played, I forget the name of it now, but it was strictly an outpost. I think there were 32 troops assigned to this particular base, and here comes 15 of us. And we performed in their rec hall, and their rec hall was not much larger than the area that we're in right now. And it was a marvelous experience for the actors and for the two faculty members that went.
Back in Joplin, Missouri, where Joplin Junior College had become Missouri Southern College, the Barn Theater was being used for an average of 4 shows per year. Before 1976, 46 productions were done in the Barn Theater. But the college was growing and plans were made for a new and larger theater.
Well, we came here with the idea that it would be temporary quarters. We never expected to stay here, well, probably as long as we ended up staying. No, the Taylor Auditorium was an idea from the Board of Regents. They wanted a large auditorium that would be big enough to house the entire college community, which of course is rather ironic today in view of our population, but it was never anticipated that we would grow to the extent that we have. They started on plans for the Taylor Theater, I'd say about 1971 or 1972, Sean. Of course, it was a matter of getting the appropriation. It's a very expensive building. The Taylor is equivalent to a 4-story building, actually. Any proscenium theater with a stage house the size of Taylor, which is 66 feet high, and of course you have to have that if you're going to fly scenery, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Taylor Auditorium was completed and dedicated in 1976, and the first production was Green Grow the Lilacs. The Barn Theater, although it is still used to present student-directed plays, is now used by the Campus Activities Board to show movies twice a week.
It's wonderful that CAB is using it for the movies, because I think it's a unique theater, and the barn itself is so pretty.
So we felt very privileged to be able to have this facility, and it proved quite unique. Some people regard the Barn Theater as some of their happiest days, both either as a performer or as a member of an audience. Because one of the outstanding things, I think, about that place was the intimacy that it allowed, which, of course, is quite different from what we have today.
One of the things that constantly amazes us is that you can take the Barn Theater, the whole Barn Theater, and put it on the stage at Taylor. And so, you've kind of gone from the ridiculous to the sublime in terms of size.
It's 30 feet from the curtain line at Taylor to the first row of seats. And that's almost the distance from that stage to nearly the last row up there, see. So the move made quite a difference as far as our staging is concerned. Now, the first thing that had to change was the style of production. Everything at Taylor had to be much bigger. And as a result, everything is more expensive because you have to build a lot more of everything. Costumes, for example. Mrs. Bowman, our customer, says that it takes approximately 6 more yards of material to do any period costume for Taylor stage as opposed to the Barn Theater stage. And also, it took a different style as far as training the actors. They had to be much bigger in terms of projection. Their voices had to be bigger. We had to work harder on projection, technique as far as standing positions are concerned, whereas here you can use a 3/4 back position or turn full back to the audience, speak, and still be understood. Can't do that at Taylor. All that had to be changed. And it is more difficult, quite frankly, when you're working with students who come from various high schools who have worked on small stages, and it's a whole new ball game. We called our move when we went down there, going from the majors to the minors. I mean, the minors to the majors, as far as a move is concerned. It's like that, going from minor league ball to major league ball.
After working in the theater department for 31 years, Britsky is understandably proud of a few of his accomplishments.
Well, one of the things I'm most proud of is the Children's Theater program and how it has grown over the 17 years that it has been in operation. Very encouraging and exciting, and in fact it has reached the the entire region, because we have sometimes, I keep track, we have sometimes as many as 35 different towns represented, and by that I mean groups, Brownie troops and Cub Scout troops who bring 20, 15, sometimes 40, 50 people to the theater. The audiences have grown from well, a good year way back in 1969, 1970, 71, in that period was around maybe 800. And as far as the total audience is concerned in Joplin, and then we would have another maybe 200 or 300 over in Carthage. And now we're between 10,000 and 12,000 a year. You've been to Taylor Auditorium. You know that it seats 1,300 downstairs, and to have that place filled is quite an experience. It's a thrill. The things I'm very proud of course, are the students. The students who have, some of whom have graduated and gone on to graduate schools and are in some aspect of theater today, or are teaching, or doing anything and making a contribution in their community. Because of some of the qualities that they honed, or some of the skills that they honed when they were here. That's this Marne Theater is something I'm very proud of. I think it's a very unique building to have on the campus, and I don't think it would be here were it not for the work of Mr. Hunt and myself and a student by the name of Bob Newman, who was a sophomore at the junior college at the time we were planning all this, and he had some drafting ability, and he drafted the drawings. I'm proud of the college. One of the reasons I've been here 31 years is to be part of all the growth of Missouri Southern.
During the growth of the college, the theater department has also steadily grown due to the influence of Milton Britsky.
I would say that Milt Britsky was my, at least educational father, and he really directed me as a beginning teacher in what I hope were some very sound academic theories and policies and ways of doing things. I credit Milt Britsky with you know, what I am today, really. So I have very fond memories of them.
Milton Britsky particularly, since my major interest was in the theater, was a tremendous influence. He gave us grounding in not only performing techniques and speaking techniques. I also had him from public speaking, which was the scariest experience I've ever had. He gave us the disciplines not only in those performance areas, but also a wonderful academic grounding in the history and literature and other academic aspects of that discipline, and was, as far as I'm concerned, extremely influential in my life.
Although Britsky and his wife, who will also retire with the commencement of the class of 1987, do not have definite plans for their new life, they do have an idea of what they intend to do.
Yes, that's one of the big things we intend to do soon after we retire. And the kind of traveling we want to do, Sean, is to travel in the United States and to go to visit various regional, professional, semi-professional theaters, and to visit them long enough to see what they're doing and how they're doing it, and become acquainted at various theaters.
Are you considering going into something?
Well, it isn't in the back. It's in a back burner as far as maybe doing some acting or working at the theater in some capacity, because I feel like Tridge and I could make a contribution in such theaters. Not necessarily on a part-time work basis, or if it were part-time, it would just be, say, on a summer situation. because I don't want to get tied down with too much pressures. I want to end my directing career here at Southern. I don't want to do any more directing because there's just so much pressure. I mean, the buck stops with the director, and the director's responsible for everything that's on that stage. And there just comes a time when you want to rid yourself of that so you can sleep soundly at night.
Although Britsky is looking forward to his retirement, he doesn't prefer to use the word retirement.
No, I'm looking forward to retirement as a commencement, actually. And I think of, I don't like the term senior citizen. I don't like the term retirement. I think that I think it's bad to do this. I think it's detrimental on the individual psychologically. So I'm looking in terms of new experiences and beginning a new kind of life, and hopefully some new challenges.
Although he's leaving the stage, the sets, the props, the actors, the department, and Missouri Southern behind, Britsky still has visions for the college.
It's really going to burst forth, I think, with new programs and new ideas, and with President Leon's goal of making it bringing to it and giving it ultimately a national reputation as being a quality college. I think that's very exciting, Sean. And when you think that I've seen the college, and I've been at the college from the time it was 425 students and 27 faculty members to over 200 faculty members and over 4,300 or 4,400 students, I mean, that's excitement.
Throughout 3 changes in the location and name of the college, the construction of 2 theaters, hundreds of plays, and thousands of actors and actresses, the name Britsky has become synonymous with the word theater at Missouri Southern. As Mr. and Mrs. Milton Britsky leave, theater in Joplin, Missouri will never quite be the same.